Welcome everybody to Quantacast 10. So we've got to 10 over the last 2 years, I guess we've been going. As always, I have Stacey with me on my right.
Hi Tim.
Welcome Stacey, and Chris on my left.
Hi Tim,
Chris?
how are you going?
Today we're here to talk about 646 to 658 Ingham Road in Mount Louisa, Townsville. Very close to Bowley, one of the largest industrial precincts in Townsville.
Yes.
Chris, we have been arm wrestling to get this property under control for since April of this year. And finally we've got there, which is great. We think it's great buying. But why don't we just highlight the metrics before we get into some more detail on the property?
Yeah, sure, Tim. So yes, as you mentioned, really long road to get here, but very much worth it. It was worth pursuing, and the highlights are really, it's a really strong return in that it starts at, distributions are going to start at 8.25, grow to 9.5 in year 5, so that's an average of 8.75 across those 5 years. It's got 3 really good tenants with, and we can talk about them more later, but their average lease expiry is 6.65 years away, so it's got a really long WALE. It's land rich, it's a 3.2 hectare site with 26% site cover, so that gives us flexibility if any of the tenants want to grow or we want to bring on new uses or new tenants. There's upside in the rents and upside in capital value. So the rents are, the average rent across the property is $109 a square metre. Market rents are over $150 a square metre. So we think it's a really under-rented property that's going to deliver value in the future. And finally, the property is irreplaceable in the sense of today's construction costs. We're acquiring it at 50% of the replacement cost.
A great summary, thanks Chris. Stacey, just on the property itself, the shed is of age, and we went and had a look at it and we spent some time with the tenants. What was your view of the property?
As you know, we spend a lot of time looking at these assets on paper before we go and visit them, and this was a very appealing opportunity at first glance, but when we went and had a look at it, our interest was piqued significantly. For a shed of that age, it's been incredibly well looked after. The current owner is really hands-on. He's spent a lot of money and a lot of time on making sure that it's maintained, and it's maintained in a way that services the tenants as they sit now. And as we walked around there, it's not too often that you find industrial assets that are so well cared for by sitting tenants. They all treat it as though it's their own. They had a real sense of ownership of their individual premises, and they all spoke incredibly favourably about how well the premises service their needs. And as Chris mentioned, we've got the opportunity to expand there, should any of them want to. So in terms of servicing their longer term needs, we've certainly got the capacity to do that there. I
completely agree. And on the condition of the shed, the landlord very passionate about the place. That's why it took us a little while to negotiate getting it away from him, so to speak. Chris, let's get into the tenants on site now. There's 3 tenants there, which de-risks the income, which I think is suitable for our investors. Let's go through them.
Yeah, sure. So first tenant, Recar, occupies 50% of the lettable area of the building. Recar are owned by AMA Group, which is a ASX-listed company. They've got 3,400 staff across Australia and New Zealand. At Ingham Road in Townsville, the Recar business here is to repair and maintain heavy and large vehicles. So the facility they've got there is full of everything oversized. So oversized paint sheds, oversized cranes, oversized hoists. It's incredibly impressive. The size of the vehicles they work on is really impressive, and there's only 8 of these facilities around Australia. This is obviously the location that services the northern Queensland.
Great, and so then we move on to Shamrock Civil.
Shamrock Civil is a civil contractor. They've actually only got 4% of the lettable area, so they're a civil contracting business. Queensland, privately owned, Queensland based. They've done about 1.9 billion of projects in their 15 years of being in business. The last tenant is Carroll Engineering. Carroll Engineering is a recycling business based on Gold Coast, Brisbane, Townsville. At this location, they do tyre recycling, and so that is very important in the context of the infrastructure pipeline in Townsville because a lot of their product is used in roads and construction.
Yeah, look, I think they were the most impressive out of all three tenants to me, although they were all very happy. The equipment they've installed there, somewhere around the 2 million mark for some of the machinery that was on site.
Was what was there, and with another similar order still coming.
Yeah, this is a second piece of equipment coming as well, which I believe is now in and operating. And again, Carroll's a 10-year lease from 2023.
Correct.
And Recar AMA Group is a 10-year lease from 2019.
Correct.
So it's Shamrock have extended. So the 6.65 year WALE is really impressive for an industrial property.
Well, it's a particularly given the tenant diversification that you mentioned earlier. So a lot of industrial sector investments we look at are single tenant, and they're fine. You've got to obviously make sure do your due diligence on the tenant and make sure they're a very bankable tenant. But it always helps to have some tenant diversification, which we've got here.
Yeah, Chris, let's talk location, because Ingham Road is a prominent road through that large industrial precinct in Townsville.
As one of the major infrastructure projects in Townsville, Ingham Road is being upgraded from a 2-lane to a 4-lane, which is this property will be a real beneficiary of. For Recar that services heavy vehicles, the upgraded road is going to have greater carrying capacity for its customers. And I think, Stacey, you were talking to Carroll Engineering.
Yeah, Carroll Engineering mentioned how important it was to them because it gave very easy access to the port, because they export some of their products overseas, of course, exporting, but mainly to India. And so it was very well located for them.
Also, with the location, I think it's only about 9 k's out of the CBD. Bruce Highway is very close, in very close proximity. So, all things lead to a good location.
Absolutely.
Chris, let's talk DD quickly. The team's gone through an extensive process, as they always do. What did they uncover?
Look, it was a pretty clean due deal process. We went through everything with fine-tooth comb. It took over a month. All our usual investigations into, town planning, building fabric, leases, legal, etc. There are a couple of things, as there always are. In this property, we identified the roof needed some attention, so we went out and got some pricing to do that. As part of our capital raise, we have allowed sufficient working capital plus a generous contingency to be able to do those works, which we'll get straight into post-settlement.
And there was a little price adjustment around that as well, I believe.
There was. There's a couple of things that just needed attention and that the vendor wasn't aware of. So that did result in a couple of additional discussions with the vendor about price.
Great. Stacey, let's talk a little bit about the trust structure and also the settlement date.
So in keeping with our last few, Tim, this is a closed-ended single asset fund, which has come about from the overwhelming feedback from investors that they like to have the security around term and the assets that they're investing in. So 7 years with an investment horizon of 5. This one is working slightly differently to our previous ones in that there's a bit of a delayed settlement. So in negotiating terms with the vendor, we'll be settling on 31st of March. So in the meantime, though, funds that are deposited with us will be placed in an interest-bearing account. So normally that's not the case because settlement's quite close. Mm-hmm. So on payment of the deposit, that'll be invested into an interest-bearing account where we're currently receiving 5 basis points below the cash rate, so 4.3% at the moment. That will change if the rate changes over time. And the interest earned on that will be paid to investors after settlement. So deposit at time of application, we invest that, we call on balance funds closer to settlement, settle, and then investors will get payment of the interest earned in the meantime.
Great. And I think Dave mentioned to me that if people want to pay their full balance and get the 4.3% on the way through...
Yeah, any amount deposited, we will put into that account.
Okay, fantastic. Chris, over to you to wrap this up.
So yeah, Tim, we're really looking forward to heading towards settlement on this one. $10.25 million purchase, which we think is a really great price for this asset. It's giving a great distribution for investors of 8.25 to 9.5 over 5 years. The average of that is 8.75%. It's got a long WALE with 3 great tenants, 6.65 year WALE. It's a great land holding, 3.2 hectare site, only 26% of it is built on. upside in rent and capital value, which is really important to us in terms of the exit. So the average rent is $109 versus $150 plus market rent for the premises, and it's just near replaceable asset. It's 50% below replacement value.
And that's why we've got 50% raised already, Stacey.
That's exactly right.
So the next time our investors will be seeing our faces will be for our Christmas message, which we always have a lot of fun. I'll try and grow the moustache into a full beard by then. But look, thanks very much again for joining us, Chris. Thanks very much for being here, Stacey, and we look forward to bringing our next Quantacast very soon.